talked about discussion number 7, which was whether prayer should be allowed in public school. And for how we did this project was we gave the 2 separate arguments. So we have the agreement side that prayer should be allowed in public school, and the disagreement side that prayer shouldn't be allowed. And what we talked about was not necessarily what we personally feel, but it's what people that feel the either agreement or disagreement side, the cases they would make for either side they take. So prayer and religion have always been pretty heavily debated for public schools. The early schools of America were very welcome to being God-centered, and they would have prayer in their classroom, and they would basically use the Bible as one of their textbooks. But as time went on, different groups of people came into America, and they had different religions. So there was a butting of heads, and like, for example, the Puritans were not tolerant of being taught different religions that were different from their own. So then they started having different schools that didn't teach religion or that taught different schools with different religions. So in 1962, the Engel versus Vitale case was brought to the Supreme Court, and that case was whether prayer should be allowed in public schools. And ultimately, the Supreme Court's verdict was that reciting prayer was not allowed in public schools, and it was unconstitutional. I had the agreement side of the argument, so that prayer should be allowed in public schools. Now, I'm not necessarily arguing that teachers should pray during their class time over students, or that teachers should try to teach the students the religion they follow because they think it would be good for the students and they want the students to begin following their religion. But I'm saying this more as a generalized of the school, whether prayer should be allowed. And I think prayer should definitely be allowed for the individuals of the school, that they're allowed to pray, whether it's before they eat their lunch or whether they just pray silently to themselves at their desk without disturbing anything. In the Constitution, there is the freedom of speech. So students should be able to express their religion, and they would be able to evangelize to other students, and that is just a part of their freedom of speech. Now, one thing that could be brought to the public school would be maybe like a 5 minutes each day for students to pray. And this does not necessarily mean for a specific religion. It could be whatever religion a certain student is. They can pray for whatever religion they subscribe to. So, according to ADL.org, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a statute requiring a moment of silence which students could use for silent prayer or meditation because it was enacted for a purpose of advancing religion. Now, I would say that this quiet prayer time wouldn't necessarily have to be for prayer. So if a student does not follow a religion, they would not have to participate by praying. They can sit at their desk, or they could use that time to do their homework, or as a study hall, a short study hall period. But it wouldn't force any religion on a student, any specific religion or religion at all on any students. Now, something that should definitely be allowed in public schools are clubs or Bible studies that are focused on religions. This would not have to interfere with class time. It could be during lunchtime or recess, and students of a certain religion can meet up with other people from their religion and have that time to come together, and they can pray together and, do whatever they do for their religion.
So my side is disagreeing with prayer, and so teachers should not force their students to recite different prayers in the classroom, and having prayer in the classroom can be a form of bullying, and discrimination, and students might feel left out of different groups because they won't include different people from different religions. And having religion in a public school isn't always necessary, because if you want to learn more about your faith, then you should probably go to a private school. And according to All About History, the prayer in schools violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which states that the government shall not have any laws with the establishment of religion. And considering that schools are funded by the government, having prayer in schools is considered government established religion. And according to connectus.org, having prayer in schools also violates separation of church and state, which means that the meaning of church should stay out of state businesses, and religious organizations should stay out of schools, as they are already being funded by the state and should not get further gain from adding these practices in public schools. And having prayer in the schools also doesn't help when there's different denominations, because what they are practicing might be different from what they are learning at church. And there's a lot of different religions, and so it's hard to just base it off of one religion in the classroom. And according to connectus.org, having prayer in schools also doesn't help when the teacher is trying to be the role model, as it's taking away from them being the leader, and people are relying on the dependence of God and relying on Him for their actions instead of themselves. And when the teacher is trying to teach about positive choices on their own and not always relying on what the Bible says. And having religion in the schools also is hard on the teacher when they might not necessarily believe in the same thing that's being taught in the classroom. So I think that having prayer in the classroom isn't always the best choice.